privacy is a super interesting topic to me, and it's something I actually didn't really think about all that much until fairly recently. I was so enamored with like all these cool internet technologies and all these fun things that we could do, and that I didn't really think about what the trade-off was there. You know, I grew up, and then the internet came, and then it was like, okay, I'm online, and I do everything online, and I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing online or how I'm doing it online. And so, you know, I was fully doxxed, you know, from the beginning of the internet. And so there's like no way to take that back once it's done, right? It's only a one-way street with privacy. Like once you've given it away, you can't get it back. And so I think that's kind of like number one point is, you know, we just need to make sure that people understand that it is a one-way door. And two, it's just kind of a fundamental human right. Like you should be able to decide who you want to share important information with. And that doesn't necessarily include your government or your bank or, you know, people like that, you know, mega institutions. So to me, it's one of those topics that a lot of people pay lip service to, like the European government. I think they like to say they do a lot for privacy by, you know, trying to sue Google and make everybody click cookie banners. But like those aren't privacy. That does nothing to actually improve privacy. And if you look at what they actually do rather than what they say, you know, they're trying to erode their citizens' privacy a lot, you know, with things like the Digital Euro project. I think privacy is one of those sleeper topics that we're all going to care about a lot once it's gone. But, you know, if you don't talk about it ahead of time, then you don't have a choice. You don't have a chance to get it back. Every time you install an app, you're basically clicking through their, you know, terms of service as fast as you can and not reading any of it. But what they're doing under the hood, and, you know, I've built applications like this. I know it's very simple to do. You can, you know, instrument every single action across the app. You get a ton of personal data about your users just from the fact that they're using a device that they have with them all the time. The phones have gotten better at, you know, asking you for permission to use like location services, but almost no one thinks twice about just being like, yes, just get it out of my face. And so it's, as a developer, as a, you know, big company, it's easy to collect tons of information, even if you don't know what you're going to do with it. Just the idea of being able to go, cool, we've got all this information, like we'll be able to use it somehow in the future to help our business. And I think a lot of those things start from a point of, you know, they're not thinking about like doxing you, they're not thinking about like taking away your privacy. They're just thinking about how do I make my business a bit better. But having these huge honeypots of data, you know, becomes an important thing and becomes something that will inadvertently get leaked at some point. And so even the best intentioned companies are going to screw it up at some point. And then there's obviously all the not well-intentioned folks out there, like, you know, the state actors like the NSA, who have been doing this on purpose and buying all the data from these companies for years. And they have very sophisticated ways of linking up all the metadata and being able to figure out exactly who they're looking at, even if it's anonymized. And so I think, you know, when you think about all that data that gets collected, you know, at first blush, it feels like, well, you know, it's anonymized. They're not going to be able to tell anything about me. And like, also, who would care? Who would care until they do care? And then they've got all the data they want. So again, it's a one-way street. Once it's gone, it's gone. I think the scarier stuff is when it's like all of your location data linked with all of your transaction data linked with something that is, I guess, important from an institutional perspective. So if your like real government identity is linked to all of your transaction and location data, they can form a very complete picture of what it is you do and how you do it and why. And that opens up the door for all sorts of the kind of social credit score type things. You know, they can easily control the population by just saying, listen, we don't want people to do X and Y. And COVID opened our eyes to this, right? Like they, you know, here they're driving around saying, you know, stay in your homes, if you're not allowed outside. It would have been a very short step for them to say, we now have all of your location data live from your phones. We know whether you're at home or not. And we can just send you a fine immediately, or we can just deduct it from your bank account directly. And so, you know, that stuff sounds, you know, Orwellian and dystopian and, you know, oh, that only happens in China. But yeah, it happens in China already. It's a very easy switch for them to throw that and turn that on in Europe. And then America to be like, well, the Europeans are doing it. They care about privacy a lot. So like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this too. And then everybody falls because, you know, everybody just kind of goes, well, all the major powers do this, so we're just going to do this. I mean, I guess there's various varying degrees of how like how controlling the CBDC can be. At its heart, though, it's a shitcoin made by government, right? Like it is a cryptocurrency based on some sort of They can say it's a blockchain if they want. It also just could be a database, like all money is now. And it's basically either money directly issued by the government directly to the people, or they might still want to keep the big banks as an intermediary in the middle there. But the idea is that we can give the population money, through universal basic income or whatever, and this is why people will accept it, readily. We can give you, this money. We can control inflation. We can control interest rates much quicker, easier, better. We can be more agile with how we manage the monetary system. That's their sell. But obviously, they then have all the information on you. I hate big banks. I think they're mostly generally corrupt and horrible, but they at least give us one layer of intermediation between governments and the people. Big institutions are never great at really sharing data. So that intermediation, while, we don't like them, is still an important thing, right? Like, it's still important to have some layer in between. Obviously, the best would be a system that is under no one's control, that is, like Bitcoin. But I think it's a much worse fate if we say, okay, now we're just dealing directly with the government. They can give and take as they will, as they want, with a digital form of money. When you really get into it, though, and you actually start to care about this stuff, you very quickly realize that, tools like Nostr are incredibly important. Tools like Bitcoin are incredibly important because it gives you the ability to transact with anybody, anywhere on the planet, for your own reasons, sort of makes sure that that's a possibility. And Nostr gives you, free speech everywhere that's completely uncensorable and remains that way. You cannot be deplatformed from Nostr. Especially if you run your own relay, you've always got a backup of everything you've ever said. And being able to sort of duplicate that out again over the internet, like the internet's a great copy machine. And so that speech gets duplicated fast. Making sure that we are continuing to push tools like that forward and make sure those options are there is the most important thing we can do to give people options. Nostr at its core is just a communications protocol. It's just basically a set of instructions that tell two computers how to talk to each other, how to send messages back and forth. If you think about it from that level, it's actually incredibly simple. It uses really simple basic web technologies that have been around for 20 years. They're very well tested, they're very well understood, they're very well supported. So it makes it really easy to build lots of different types of tools on top of that. The first use case was obviously social media. So kind of Twitter-style interactions where you're sending out little notes and stuff back and forth to each other. But it's extremely easy, and it's already been built, to make blogging platforms out of Nostr technology, to make video streaming platforms, to make marketplaces, to make job boards. So it's very straightforward to build pretty much any use case you can think of on the internet on Nostr. And the benefit there is that instead of having all the data siloed in one person's database, which was the case throughout the internet so far, someone is running a database somewhere where all of your data goes to, and usually that database is behind a firewall and, boxed in on one of their servers. That data is wholly controlled by them. If they're nice, they'll give you a way to export that data, but they don't have to. And they certainly can change their minds at any point, as we've seen with tools like Reddit and Twitter over the past, couple of years. Nostr breaks that completely by saying, look, the databases are these things called relays. They're pretty simple, they're pretty dumb. And you send your data to many relays, as many as you'd like, in fact. And the relays can also talk to each other and duplicate data between themselves. And so, in that way, you sort of, as a user, have control over how broad do I want to spread this data? Is it something where I do want it to be fully public? Or is this a situation where maybe I run a private relay with a couple friends and that's our private chat? And I know that database lives, in my phone or, on my laptop or wherever it is. You get a broad range of options there, but you also, and you have total control over that. But it means that even at its surface level, for a use case like Twitter, you can't be deplatformed. You can't have your speech silenced because your speech is everywhere all the time. So people who would want to silence it would be playing whack-a-mole. They'd be going down and taking down one server after another and just watching that data pop up somewhere else, or 100 other places right after it. A relay is literally just a tiny bit of software that runs around a database. So any database type of software can be a relay. And it's literally just a simple interface that says, we accept messages in WebSocket format, and we store those messages in some way, shape, or form. And your messages need to look like this for us to accept them. And if you ask us for data back from the relay, and we're a public relay that will, that will give that data back, then we'll give you the data back that you're looking for. It's about the simplest thing, from a technologist standpoint. It's about the simplest way of just saying, hey, we're a data store, and you can send us data, and we will send you back data when you ask for it. And because it's such a well-known technology, it's incredibly easy to run one. You can, in a couple of clicks, you can have a Nostr relay set up, running on your own like Umbrel server or your own like Linux box. You can run them on your phone pretty easily because, again, it's just a lightweight database. When you get to the point of running a very big relay, it obviously, there's some scaling challenges there, but they're all, again, very well-known challenges because people have been scaling databases for years and years. There's everything in between. You can run a really simple one very cheaply, almost for free. You could run a very, very large one that services lots and lots of people. And that takes a little bit more work, but it's, absolutely doable. It's a known hard problem. At the moment, it's mostly hobbyists and, people that want to run relays because they believe in the tech. There are paid relays out there where they say, listen, we're going to do some spam control. We're going to only serve people that pay us money. And so I think, in that way, it's an interesting business model because it takes it back from the, you as a user are the product to, hey, I actually am the customer here. I want this thing to, save my data. I'm willing to pay for that. And I have a really simple way through Bitcoin to pay, digitally for that in very small amounts to the Lightning Network. The paid relays, I think, are actually an amazing business model. And I know people that run fairly large paid relays that they are not quite profitable, but they're getting close. They can pay for their service, pay for all the costs of running the service without too much trouble from people paying them directly. To be honest, that's the thing that really drew me into Nostr. It's a return to, businesses that serve customers directly rather than, there's all these layers in between of you're not the customer, you're the product. And what you're getting and what you're paying for. In the initial document that Fiat Jaff, who created Nostr, put out there, he was like, there's a sentence in there and it's a bit of a joke, but he's like, and it's not P2P, so it works. P2P is really hard. The technologies to make a proper P2P system work and stay up and stay highly available have not been figured out properly. And so this is not perfectly P2P, but it is decentralized to a meaningful degree. And so there are different actors in the space, sort of like in Bitcoin. You've got miners, you've got node runners, you've got people that are using the network. It's the same with Nostr. You've got relays, you've got people that are building services that are sort of interacting with both relays and users. You've got clients, and then you've got the actual end users that are using the service. And those users have different incentives, but those incentives, should keep themselves in check. Nostr was built by a bunch of Bitcoiners. They figured out a bunch of ways to apply Bitcoin-like, things to Nostr. So the most important one at the moment is Zaps, which are a way to integrate Lightning to Nostr. And so your profile actually can be connected to an LNURL address, which means that you can send and receive money directly through Nostr using Lightning. And that's actually really powerful because it creates a really good signal in all of this social media noise that's much better than likes, right? If you're sending someone actual Bitcoin rather than just hitting a button that says thumbs up or, heart, that's a much more powerful signal as yes, I actually agree with this or I care about this. It forms a really interesting way, of saying, of one, getting signal, but also it's actually just really nice. You go to dinner with a bunch of people, you follow them. It's sort of your social graph meshed with your bank account in a sense. So you go to dinner with a bunch of people, someone pays, and then you're just I'll just zap you. You don't have to, it's not another system. You know exactly what, their social media profile is. So you're not going to PayPal, a secondary system run by someone else. You just use Bitcoin, and you don't have to ask them for invoices. You don't have to do any of that. You just go to their profile, hit zap, and that's it. It's done. People are what matter, and the ability for people to act as free individuals, free agents, and do the things that they want to do, that to me is the most important thing to keep enshrined. Bitcoin and Nostr and tools like that, that's how we do that. That's how we can make that happen.